otherwise we can't. So I said, okay, fine. So the car arrived, looked amazing, and it was 4 in the morning, just before I had to drive it in. And we took the cover off, it looked amazing. I opened it up and sit inside, and it was like this smell of burnt and curry and a few other things. And it really didn't smell like an Aston Martin, so I said, guys, we're gonna do something. And it was, of course, 4 in the morning, what are you gonna do? So I said, I remember when I went to the toilet, restroom, there was this dispenser that kind of go, you know, when you open the door. So they go out and get that, and we sprayed the whole car with it. So they went out, they broke it off, went back and we sprayed the whole car, put it up on the show, and at our presentation was 10 in the morning, we presented the car, took the cover off. It won the 2003 Detroit Show Car of the Year, and it was an amazing thing. However, I was really set on nobody was going to sit in the car, but there came this CEO from one of the biggest car companies in the world, and he was raving about how amazing it was, which normally people don't do from other companies. And then he said, I got to sit in this car. And he just grabbed the handle, opened it up, and I couldn't say no to him, so he sat in the car, and he sat in there, and he goes, and I looked at him in terror, and he goes, there's nothing like the smell of British leather. So, you know, that kind of for me is a little bit about anything is possible in America, which is kind of cool. Now, that kind of gave me the idea of going for it. And what does that really mean? Well, it means obviously really that I think I learned in America anything is possible, but I kind of want to a little bit bring it back to Denmark as well and talk a little bit about Danish design. And the quote that was given before that I have to say I think is still true, that in Denmark I think we have about, if it's really great, 4 weeks of fantastic summer a year. So we got about 11 months where we're sitting inside a house, and I think that makes us think about beautiful design, and I really mean that honestly. I think in Scandinavia generally, people, because they spend a lot of time indoors, that's sort of my feeling at least, the houses are fairly simple and clean, and a lot of the design is also simple and clean. And you look at a chair like this, I think if it wouldn't say here this chair is from 1956, it could also have been designed this year. It looks just as timeless, as classic as from 1956. Same with these chairs. I know the pictures are not so good here from far away. I also think the use of natural materials, something that was talked about earlier, whether it's ice cream or Copenhagen Danish, or using wood, etc. Just the natural materials that are used in Scandinavia, I think is something very unique as well. And of course, if it comes to high tech, like a Bang & Olufsen stereo, I also think that's where not only using, of course, aluminum and other materials like that, but also this very clean design, and a design which is not just about the technology, but thinking about you're going to be looking at this stereo for 11 months of the year. You're not down at the beach, you're not walking up at Hollywood Hills and all this type of stuff. You're really inside. You're not only, when you sit there and you're listening to that stereo, you're also looking at it. So I think that's generally in Scandinavia, there is that feeling of spending more time on design and also finding out how can you make timeless design. Because Danish people don't change their things as much as the Americans do. They'll buy something and they'll keep it for years and years and years. So to make sure you don't get tired of it, it has to have this sort of timeless, clean feel. Whereas in America, people are more used to sort of buying something and then they buy something new in 6 months. But in Denmark, you buy something new in 6 years. So therefore you have to look at it a lot more. So I think that's some of the reasons perhaps that Danish design is so clean and admired around the world, and Scandinavian design generally. Now what's happened lately is we're talking about green design. I want to talk a bit about that because I'm obviously going to talk a bit about green cars as well. Green design, I think, has almost had the reputation of becoming a little bit like the look of suffering. You see, this was not from my home country. I think it was from Norway or somewhere else. There are not too many Norwegians in here. And then of course that hemp thing there for an iPhone, I don't think if anybody ever actually bought that. It probably can catch fire real easy. And then of course a garbage can where there's this green square on it to make it look like it's green design. Now I don't think that green design necessarily have to look like that, obviously. Beautiful houses, you know, a very cool LED light bulb, you know, beautiful windmills. There's a lot of things you can do, still make environmental friendly or green design and make it look cool and make it functional. And that kind of brings me to an idea I had some years ago about why can't an environmental friendly car be cool and sexy and, you know, good looking. So the idea was to kind of think a little bit about what was it that made us fall in love with cars in the first place. And if we think about cars, even if we're not really car enthusiasts, if we kind of think about when we get excited about cars, it is not usually like, you know, today's cars. It's usually the cars from the 50s or 60s, maybe the 70s, some of the earlier ones. You know, a car like this Jaguar E-Type with extreme proportions, etc. So I kind of started to look at what are these forms that, you know, exudes performance or beauty or excitement. And I started thinking about why can't we do that today? Why can't we make something cool like that? So that was really my inspiration. The other thing, of course, was also thinking out of the box. Knowing that there was, you know, mainstream electric cars, and of course there's current luxury brands. So how do we find that white space that doesn't really exist and merge that together? And of course also think about the usability of this product. You know, what is it we're doing? And, you know, what is the dreams we have about cars? Now, the dream we have about cars is a dream of the open road. And even today, any car that you buy, I'm sure when you see an advertising on TV, you always see that guy or that woman driving to work on this open road. You never really see that, which is of course reality, right? So, how do you merge the dream with reality? And the idea was to say, okay, the car was obviously invented around a little bit more than 100 years ago, and at that time it was the open road, but today we have this. So how do you merge the dream with, you know, reality? And the idea was to say, well, if you could drive far on this open road by filling up your car like you do today with gasoline, you know, and go on these open roads and have that dream would be great. But what if you could also fill it up at home in your normal plug, like you plug in your cell phone, and you could just drive to work electric and sit in that traffic jam, have no fumes, be all quiet? What if you could merge these two? Because of course we do have electric cars and we do have gasoline cars, but what if you could merge the two? Not like a Prius where it switches automatically between gas and electric, but where it would stay in electric every single day you drove to work during the entire week. And it would be about third the price. Electricity is about third the price, no pollution. And then when you want to go long, far, you jump into the car, you want to go to Las Vegas or San Francisco, wherever you want to go, you fill it up with gas because you're going further. So that was the idea. So the Fisker Karma's powertrain had the ability, or have the ability, to go about 50 miles pure electric, because the average drive in America is about 30 miles, so we felt that was enough. But it can then go the full range of a gasoline-powered car, which is about 300 miles, and then you can keep on filling up and going like a normal car. So that was the idea behind the Fisker Karma. And the idea was, of course, also to capture some of that design essence that I talked about earlier, Jaguar, Ferrari, etc., getting some of that very sexy shape back into the car and kind of ignore what everybody else are doing, what are the trends, etc., kind of saying, this is what we are going to do. The sexy long hoods, the extreme proportions, the sensual shapes, you know, they exude speed and performance, or integrate some amazing new features and really making sure that the harmony of the graphics and the sculptures, everything come together. So the Fisker Karma, for instance, have the largest solar roof in the world. Another thing that was important was attention to detail, which I think comes back to sort of the Danish design heritage, where when you put some detail on it, you really have to make attention to it, whether it's the design of the LED lamps, the instrumentation, or the new kind of, it's not really a gear shift, it's really like a pyramid selector, which is 4-button, where you press drive, reverse, neutral, or park. And then of course incorporate some new innovative details like the solar roof, the world's largest solar roof. Remember we talked about honesty of materials? So one of the ideas we had was you know, every car maker today, they go to Brazil to put in wood in the cars. And the reason they do that is because you're not allowed to cut down certain types of woods anywhere in the US or in Europe. So you go to Brazil, you cut down the wood, you bring it back to the factory, you slice it up, you go over with a flamethrower to enhance the grain, then you sand it, and then you lacquer it. And we thought, actually, in California, we don't need a flamethrower, because every year there's a California fire. And they burn down the wood that we're not allowed to cut down. So we can now buy that wood, it's already been burned, we can sand it, and we can put it into the car, and we call it reclaimed wood. So that's what we did. And actually we get all that protected special wood, burled walnut and whatever, and we put that into the car. And we actually bought up many years of use of that wood, because you don't need that much wood in the car. And there was a lot of other things you put into the car as well. I just want to sort of finish a little bit by saying that I also felt that there's other things in cars where you can go in and make some interesting design. And some of the things I've been looking at lately is watches, because I think it's one of the few products where you have so much stuff going on in such a little area, and an amazing technology as well. Obviously when you look at a watch and how it's created. So I've had a kind of affection for watches a long time, and also worked together with a Swiss group called Maurice Lacroix watches. And so I've just designed a limited edition watch that is going to come out in a couple of months actually. And I had a lot of fun with that, because a completely different thinking and mentality, because when you see somebody's watch from far away, you can't really see the details. So it's got to exude some sort of presence, but when you get close up, then of course you can really spend time in the details. There's a whole different thinking than designing cars or chairs, etc. My daily driver is a Fisker Karma. I still think it's a fantastic car. It does get a lot of looks, and it's great because when I drive around here in Los Angeles, my wife